welcome back to the Edge of Analytics. This is our 6th episode, and today I want to introduce Lexy. Lexy, tell us a little bit what you do at CCG, and then tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So at CCG, I'm the solution owner for Advanced Analytics, and I also lead the Advanced Analytics community of practice. I kind of think of myself as the spiritual leader of Advanced Analytics, whereas Brian Beasley, who was on a prior episode, is kind of the actual leader, the actual manager of the Advanced Analytics folks here. My role is to develop solutions that help our clients get to a more operationalized analytics point where they can invest in and realize the benefits from advanced analytics. So machine learning, as Brian had talked about, data science, predictive analytics, all of that. My background's primarily in marketing analytics. I've worked in loyalty and in customer relationship management for several years. I started out as a statistician before the data scientist term was ever coined. So I like to say that I started out with the least sexy title and then became somehow miraculously the most sexy title, right? Data scientist. But my areas of focus have been across the board. In loyalty, we deal with everything. So finance, telecommunications, hospitality, travel, CPG, retail, everything. So kind of all over the board.
Excellent. And you're starting a data ethics podcast.
I am. So data science ethics podcast.
Look that up if they're interested, which I think is so important with the way things are going. So I'm really excited to hear your podcast.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with just a broad definition of what does it mean to be a data-driven organization.
Yeah, so we see a lot of clients that talk about wanting to be more data-driven and more data-focused. And those organizations typically come to us because either something has gone wrong, where they had a gut feel and it didn't turn out well, or they've heard a lot of really great things about the way that organizations have been using analytics to drive their business forward and realize tremendous benefits, and they want in on the action, right? So what that typically means is getting their senior management on board to really push the rest of the team forward in using data to drive decisions and trying to make analytics a bigger focal point in their organization.
Do you want anything else?
No, go right ahead.
So tell us why companies want to prioritize being data-driven. You touched on it a little bit, but if you could kind of zero in on some of the business benefits, that would be great.
Sure, and really analytics comes down to, prioritizing analytics really comes down to kind of where does it rank in the order of other organizational priorities. So there are a lot of things, do you want to optimize your supply chain? Do you want to reevaluate your vendors? Do you want to change your product line? Do you want to target customer retention? And really, when you think about all of those, they each touch on analytics. There are analytics that go into every one of those problems. So no matter what the organization's priorities are on a larger scale, you still kind of want to have those analytics and be able to drive each of those to their optimal point. And so I think when it comes down to is evaluating not only that you have a number of priorities within your organization, but that analytics can support all of those priorities and so therefore it becomes a part of those priorities.
And I think it's really also important for digital transformation, and we'll leave that topic for another episode, but yes to everything that you just said. And how do companies become data-driven?
So it kind of starts at the top typically. It has to have executive buy-in. There absolutely has to be the senior management leading the charge. And those leaders have to then empower those below them to really use data in their decision-making processes. And that means a number of things. It means a lot of technical integration. It means a lot of operational change. It means a lot of people kind of relearning to some degree how to do their jobs or at least incorporating new tools. And so as leaders want to progress down a path of using more analytics and more data in the organization, they have to be prepared for some of those challenges and really overcoming a lot of change resistance and so forth as they start to empower others to do what they need to do with more data in their hands.
So you mentioned challenges. Let's talk about those challenges. How difficult is it to become data-driven?
It really depends on the organization. I've seen things go very smoothly, especially where there's been great communication from leadership, talking to those within the organization and across the organization about the importance of analytics and the importance of utilizing the data in their hands and the tools in their hands. Where I've seen it not as successful is when maybe leadership hasn't communicated kind of what we call the WIFM, what's in it for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So each group needs to understand what the benefit is of those analytics, why they should be using data. And if the leadership hasn't communicated what's in it for that group, typically that's where you start to see resistance. And a lot of it comes in the form of simply ignoring what's now available.
Correct.
And saying, well, I've done my job well for the last however many years, I'm going to continue to do that.
Why do I need to change?
Exactly. Why do I need to change? I've been doing great. And the answer is even more difficult when the business has been doing well. This was one that I encountered at a retailer several years ago. The business was growing leaps and bounds, and they said, well, why would I need to incorporate analytics? Everything's going fantastically. And you say yes. However, at some point, it won't be, and then what happens?
Correct. And then it's too late because it takes some time to become a data-driven organization. It doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely. And that process takes usually years, really, to build up the analytic competencies across the board, to develop the integrations that you're trying to do, to bring in additional expertise, and to really start changing the way that people are thinking about the business. It takes quite a while.
Right. And that's if your data is clean and ready to go. So
yes.
You add data quality on top of that.
Oh, yes. And data governance is a big part. I know we talked with Tony Williams about some data governance issues, and it truly starts to become a much bigger task, a bigger lift. And so being data driven means having a plan that will help you to overcome all of those challenges, not just how do we get data into a report.
Yeah, totally agree. So you mentioned organizational change management and why it's important to answer what's in it for me. So let's talk about how can organizations use OCM to support these data-driven decisions?
Sure. Yeah, the organizational change managers are there to help with transitions just like this. So helping to explain and train people on the WIFM, the what's in it for me, helping to show them the tools and how it's going to be effective in their role and how it's going to make them a more effective employee. And it gives people a chance also to shine. And so the organizational change managers are there to show them, really outline those opportunities, to say, if you use this gets you to the next level in your career. This helps you to progress. And so you can really start to drive that out. They're also there to craft new processes. And that's a big part of the change that goes on with data-driven decision making, is that people are moving from a gut feel process saying, well, this is what I think we should do, to the data says we should be doing this, and I think we can stage it in these ways. So the opinion comes a little later after the data, and so those processes need to be outlined as to where you incorporate what types of metrics, what types of analyses, what types of models to try to move forward in that process. And it can really help to show how a business can operationalize all those analytics.
And I think you and I spoke about an example of a company that was using gut to drive a decision, and then when it did look at data analytics, it found that the answer was different. Do you want to chat a little bit about the fallacy that online stores are way more important than bricks and mortar, and that bricks and mortar doesn't really impact sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was for a retailer that I worked on recently, and one of the big findings, they were looking at what happens when they expand into a new market. This is an organization that doesn't have a lot of stores, so their local presence is concentrated where they do have those stores. And when they go into a new market, they wanted to see what's the overall impact. And the impetus for this was looking at, we're seeing maybe not as much growth in a particular new market as we thought we would based on simply the in-store sales. What can we look at that's broader? Does this have a bigger impact? And what we found was that when they went into a new market, when they opened a new door, they saw about a 33% lift in their online sales. So there's kind of this baseline online sale that we were seeing prior to a door being open in that market, some kind of a more general awareness of that organization and that brand. And then as they opened that new door, it drove that much more awareness. And that was just in the first few months. So as that brand continues to expand in the market, obviously it increases from there.
And they're much more bought in now to being data-driven.
To being data-driven in all sorts of regards. And so what was interesting about that particular organization is we started out looking at marketing for them. That particular study that you were referencing was actually for finance, because they were looking to evaluate their investments in specific markets. But now we're actually seeing quite a lot of interest from merchandising, from planning, from product design. Really across the board. Finance, of course, is very interested, especially in forecasting. So we're really seeing now this start to change. And to give some perspective, you talked about the time frame that it takes. We're about a year in, and we're just starting to see some of this broader interest in really adopting analytics as part of the process.
It definitely takes time.
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned earlier, we did speak with Brian Beasley about machine learning and gaining ROI benefits from those particular projects. Where does that fit into a data-driven culture?
So machine learning and data science projects are just a small part of an analytics organization, kind of the analytics competency. And those projects tend to be very isolated in nature. Typically when you start up a machine learning project, it's to solve a specific problem. There we go. That's the word.
It's early.
It is early. Note the coffee. So when people go into a new data science project or a new machine learning project, it's to solve that particular problem and then to see what you can learn and then figure out how to use it. But machine learning and data science do have a larger opportunity in that any model may have multiple uses. It may not just be the one stakeholder that asked for that. And so the first step is obviously to do the project, do those projects and make sure that you are talking with multiple stakeholders in the business, and then operationalize them. And that's really a key. There was a recent study by Gartner that said that something like 83% of all models that are developed never make it into production, even if
Such a shame.
there's so much investment. And when you think about all the time and effort that goes into that and the learnings that come out of it, to not use them broadly in production is really a shame.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think they don't move past the first stage?
I think there are a few reasons. The first one I think is that often I've seen it. I've seen data science not communicated well to the business, and so the business doesn't necessarily see the WIFM. They don't see how it's going to change anything or what they would do with it. The other big one is really a technical implementation, which is that it often takes a very large lift from both data science and IT to move a model into a production environment. And there are so many ways now that we can get around that, to overcome that challenge. But I think that really the biggest benefits to, if you're going to invest in machine learning, and I absolutely believe that organizations should, the biggest benefits are only gained when you use those learnings and when you really make it a part of dashboards that people are seeing or processes and systems that they're using and really have their hands in day to day.
Agreed. So you mentioned operationalizing analytics as a key component to wide adoption. So tell us, what does that take to make that happen?
Yeah, so
you touched on it a little bit.
So a lot of the times it's, I know we talked with Tony about data governance. It's evaluating and identifying key metrics and putting those into the hands of managers and decision makers, making sure that they have access to data that's clean. You mentioned data quality, that's governed, that it has appropriate business rules applied to it, and then also getting models and data science tools into the hands of users, and really operationalizing it means to take that information and make decisions based on it. And so again, it comes back to empowering people to make those decisions, leveraging the data, really giving people the tools to see data and use it and manipulate it in the ways that they need to on a daily basis.
Okay, excellent. And then final question, what can companies do better to take advantage of these investments in data science, machine learning, and across analytics? Can you leave us with some thoughts of where companies can grow quickly and use some of these wonderful accelerators? Yeah,
absolutely. So I'd say if you haven't already, definitely do some analytics, do more analytics,
some
right?
Proof of concepts,
and what tends to happen is analytics begets analytics. So once you start, it just
get all excited.
It opens the floodgate. Everyone wants analytics, kind of like we were talking about with the retailer.
Agreed.
So definitely get started. Have some idea of the challenges you're trying to meet with those analytics. And then the biggest one, and I think this is where a lot of companies haven't necessarily taken the leap, is use modern technologies. One of the benefits of some of the latest infrastructure as a service types of providers is that you have the integration capabilities at your fingertips to get analytics into production very quickly. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go through the big IT lifts like you used to. Mm-hmm. And so for organizations who are still on kind of on-premise, more traditional architectures,
right,
try, at least with your proof of concepts, try using some of the new infrastructure as a service opportunities that are out there, because it really decreases the challenges that you're going to face.
Agreed. And there's lots of different ways to educate your team for free or in a very inexpensive manner. And I know some of the new machine learning software has so much built in that you don't need to really be a data scientist at your level. You can be a citizen data scientist and still get value out of those analytics.
Absolutely. There are a tremendous number of resources, some of them free online, learning what machine learning does and how to use it. And some of the tools are really kind of a drag and drop interface. So give them a try. And for those who are within the organization that are more interested in getting deeper into those, there are plenty of resources out there, and definitely encourage it.
Well, thank you, Lexy, for getting up early and doing this with us. We appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, you can email Lexy or shoot her something on LinkedIn. But thank you very much for attending today.
Thank you.